After being locked out of power in the 2024 elections, when Democrats lost the presidency, they lost the Senate, and they did not win the House, they are trying to reclaim some power in the 2026 midterms. And their chances of winning back the Senate in 2026 are extremely, extremely low. Democrats are forced to defend roughly 4 extremely vulnerable seats from Republicans, while Republicans are left to defend really 1, maybe 2 competitive seats. Now, historically speaking, in the midterms, the party out of power typically does well, and that may be true in the House of Representatives in 2026. It's not a guaranteed, but it could happen. But that is the exact opposite scenario of what is going to happen in the Senate in 2026. So today, we are going to be looking at the top 5 Senate races to watch in 2026. We are going to start off with a seat that Democrats have been trying to flip since 1996. And they have failed in 6 consecutive elections. 6 consecutive elections. And that would be the state of Maine. The 2026 U.S. Senate race in the state of Maine, where you will see Susan Collins, a Republican senator, who plans to run for re-election for a 6th term in office. This is the only Republican-held Senate seat up for election in 2026 in a state that Kamala Harris won in 2024. Now, at the same time, this election will coincide with the 2 House of Representatives elections, 2 of Maine's congressional districts, and a gubernatorial election, and many other local elections as well. Now, Maine is a very nuanced state. It's a very weird state. They have an independent senator that caucuses with the Democrats. They have a Republican senator, but they have a complete Democrat control of the state government there. And they have voted for every Democrat presidential nominee since 1992. 1992. So that means George H.W. Bush in 88 was the last time a Republican won the state of Maine. They voted for Clinton, a huge flip by 8 points, became really a Democrat stronghold during Clinton's term. 96 won by 20 points. 2000 it was a little closer, so on and so forth. Up until 2024, which in Kamala Harris only won the state by 7 percentage points. Trump carried the 2nd congressional district there by 9 points, but overall lost the state by roughly about 7 percentage points. Now, right now, Democrats control the governorship, the state legislature, both seats in Maine's U.S. House congressional delegation. Now, Susan Collins was initially elected back in 1996. 96! We have to go all the way back to 96 when Collins won by roughly 5.3 points. This occurred after William Cohen, who she actually was a staffer for and an intern for, had retired from the Senate. She ran in 1996 after running for the governor's mansion in 1994. She won this election by about 5 percentage points. And it's been her race to win ever since then. Fast forward to 2002. She won the state by 16 percentage points. 16 percentage points. Well, at the same time, Al Gore won the state by 5 points. Going back to the Senate again. Fast forward to 2008. Susan Collins won the state of Maine by 22 points. She's expanded her margin of victory in every year since, 96. 2002 was even bigger. Now we're at 2008 and it continues to get bigger. We saw she won by 22 percentage points at the same time when Barack Obama won the state by 17 points. You're seeing close to a 40-point swing between the top of the ballot and the next ring down on the ballot. Pretty impressive stuff right there. Pretty impressive stuff. Fast forward to 2014 when she wins her biggest election victory ever by 37 points in 2014. Now, obviously, we know 2014 was a good year for Republicans. There was a lot of backlash to what was going on in the Obama administration. She won by 37 points. Huge margin of victory. Fast forward to 2020. That margin of victory is cut down quite a bit to only 8 percentage points. 8 percentage points was all it was that she won in 2020. But remember, at the same time, when President Joe Biden, he won the state by 9 points, you're still seeing a roughly 20-point swing between the top of the ticket and the next rung down. That is a huge feat in an extremely liberal state. Although it has been trending more and more to the right in recent years, this was a liberal state that was won by 20 plus points. For sure double digits, but 20 plus points at a very minimum. But now we are seeing Susan Collins. Now, she has not said, I know it says she declared, she has not declared yet. She has said she most likely will run. She plans to run, has not declared that she is running, though. She has said that she plans on running. As of right now, she has roughly $3.2 million cash on hand. Now, you jump over to the Democrat side. Who can beat Susan Collins? Jordan Wood, who is a former staffer to U.S. Representative Katie Porter, has already declared, but you have a number of names in here. Jared Golden, which he's actually already come out, and I'm surprised that he's still in this potential, because he's actually come out and said that he is not going to run in this race. It's kind of funny, Jared Golden is a Democrat, but he actually interned and was a staffer for Susan Collins for about a year and a half. You also have the former U.S. Representative from Maine's 1st Congressional District, Congresswoman Pingree, who was actually the nominee for U.S. Senate in 2022 against Susan Collins. So in her first re-election, they ran against each other. You also have the Speaker of the Maine House of Representatives, who I think you'd say Fatu, however you say his name, is looking to run. But ultimately, not a lot of, it's like you have, of course, Governor Janet Mills. But ultimately, I think this is just a pretty weak bench right here in Maine. I would say Jared Golden is the best chance that they had, but ultimately, he's already said he's not going to run. He didn't endorse anyone in the 2020 race just out of due to respect for Susan Collins, the fact that she was his former boss. But you also have an independent, Philip Wrench, who is the outgoing member of Maine's Space Corporation Board of Directors, who roughly has about $45,000 cash on hand. Now, if you're looking at the general predictions, you can see that 2 rate this as a toss-up or a battleground, and 2 rate this as a lean Republican state. As of right now, I have this as a lean Republican. Now, if you haven't been on our channel before, this is how our rankings go. You have a tilt, and I guess we'll start up here. You have a safe Republican, and we'll actually start down here. Tilt. This is, if it is a tilt, this is within 1 percentage point we believe the race will be decided. Now, from tilt to lean, if you'd say lean, that means it's within 1 to 5 percentage points. If it's likely, we believe it's between 5 and 10 percentage points. And if it is a safe, we believe it is going to be more than 10 percentage points in this race. So right now, I have this as Susan Collins winning re-election between 5 to 10 percentage points. You have to take into account, this is a midterm in which Democrats are going to, I've already said, they are willing to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to unseat Susan Collins in this race. Both Republicans and Democrats are promising to spend hundreds of millions of dollars in this race here. Hundreds of millions of dollars to turn this into a very, very competitive race. But at the end of the day, I do not believe that Democrats have an opportunity here to win this race. And that's why I have this as the 5th seat. I think it's something that we should all keep an eye on, but ultimately I believe Susan Collins will win re-election here. She has been very, very good at staying in line with the Republican Party, but bucking the party where it matters. And that is why she has been elected to Maine. Because the reality is if they were to pick someone who, Susan Collins is going to vote with the party 75% of the time, let's just say. And now, if you were to nominate someone who's going to vote with the Republican Party in its current state right now, 99 or 98% of the time, a Democrat would win this seat. But for the simple fact that Susan Collins has seniority, she's able to get funds to her state, tons of funds to her state, because she is the top ranking senator on the Appropriations Committee. She has garnished a lot of power in D.C., and that is definitely something that she can run on. She has the ability to direct lots of federal funds to her home state, something a junior senator would not be able to do. And simply for the fact that I think this is a very pathetic Democrat field that we're looking at right here. Now, moving on to number 4. The 4th one is the state of New Hampshire, the Senate race. This was seen for a while as a very vulnerable seat. Now, right now, I have this as a lean Democrat seat in my prediction as of right now. Now, this is a seat that was held by 3-term incumbent Democrat Senator Jeanne Shaheen, who earlier this year said that she announced she would not run for re-election in 2026. Now, this will be the first open Senate election in New Hampshire since 2010, and for the first time for this seat since 1990. Remember, she came in as the Democrat wave back in 2008. She was elected in the state of New Hampshire. She beat John Sununu, who is actually the brother of Chris Sununu. Previously to that, John Sununu had served since 2001. Since 1996, Bob Smith was the incumbent senator, And then previously to that, he had won his initial election back in 1990. So this is a very big opportunity for Republicans. Now, it's not as big as it once was, simply because of Chris Sununu, the brother of John Sununu, who held this seat for a term before. But we'll get into that in just a second. So New Hampshire is considered to be really a nuanced state. It is a blue state at the federal level. Kamala Harris carried the state by roughly, I think, like 3 percentage points. Yeah, 2.8 percentage points she won by in 2024. But in the entire delegation, both senators, both representatives are Democrats. However, Republicans control the governorship, both state legislative chambers, and a majority on the executive council. So you can see there's a very stark contrast when it comes to federal policies. New Hampshire likes Democrats. They like what the Democrats have to say. But at the state level, they love Republicans. They really love, look at this. Chris Sununu. Let's do 2020. Chris Sununu won by 31 points in the state of New Hampshire in 2020. At the same time, when President Biden won it by 7 points, almost a 40-point swing. In 2020, at the same time, when you saw Jeanne Shaheen win re-election by 15.5 percentage points. You clearly see why Republicans did everything they could to get Chris Sununu to jump in this race. But ultimately, after declining once and then opening up the possibility that he may run and then declining again, Chris Sununu said he was not going to run. I had this as a toss-up state if Chris Sununu was in the race, and I actually had it as a lean Republican state. But now he is not in it. I believe this is a Democrat lean state as of right now. Now, the only candidate who's declared to run is Chris Pappas. He seems most likely that he will be the nominee for the Democrats in 2026. As of right now, Jeanne Shaheen has announced she's not going to run. Andy Kunster, the representative, is not going to run, and Maggie Goodlander is not running in this election either. He has picked up a number of different endorsements, and I think it is very fair to say that he will be the nominee for the Democrats. Now, on the Republican side, Scott Brown, who's the former U.S. ambassador to New Zealand and Samoa and was actually a senator from Massachusetts, he won a special election in 2010, served out this remaining term, and then ultimately he ran in New Hampshire in 2024 against Jeanne Shaheen at that time. You saw Scott Brown. He ran and lost a very close race. Now, we know 2014, a good year for Republicans, don't get me wrong, but he only lost the state by about 3 percentage points. Not a bad year. Now, ultimately, do I think that there's going to be as good of a showing? I probably see this more closer to 5 points. It's like it is very much on the tilt of a lean to likely Democrat seat. I could see anywhere from 4, 5, 6, 7 points that the Democrats win this seat by. Ultimately, I think Scott Brown will be the nominee. Obviously, still a couple names that are left in here. The current governor said she's not running currently right now. Chris Sununu, of course, declined, said he's not going to be running. He did have the endorsement of Donald Trump. And that's ultimately why you are seeing Inside Election. They haven't updated it since February, but they said this is a battleground state, but everyone else has this as a lean or a tilt Democrat state. And you can see exactly why they wanted Chris Sununu to run. Chris Sununu was beating Chris Pappas by almost 9 percentage points, beating Jeanne Shaheen by 8 percentage points. Meanwhile, at the same time, you saw Jeanne Shaheen beaten in the same exact poll, the same poll right here. You see Jeanne Shaheen outdoing Scott Brown by almost 10 percentage points here. Not a great look. Let's just put it that way. Not a great look. Ultimately, I do think that Scott Brown can make this close. He can very much make this a close election. But with the tide of the country, I think it is safe to say that Democrats will most likely carry this state. Obviously, we are still, 16 months out? We have a long ways to go. Don't get me wrong. These are just seats that I think you should watch go over the next year and a half. We have a long ways to go. A lot could change between now and then. A lot can change. But ultimately, I have this as a lean Democrat seat. Definitely a race you should keep an eye on. Now moving over to our third race. This is an interesting race here. This is the Michigan Senate race in 2026, where we saw that Gary Peters, the incumbent senator, is declining to seek re-election for a third term, initially elected back in 2014. In Michigan, Peters won the state by almost 13 points. Fast forward to 2020. We know that Michigan is a very, very nuanced state. This was once a really bastion of the Democrat ability to win a presidential election. Look at this. 2012, Obama won it by almost 10 points. He won it by almost 17 points in 2008. This was a part of the blue wall where you saw Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. This was the blue wall that helped Democrats win. But obviously won a good election. But then 2020, it was a close election against John James. Now, John James is running for governor in Michigan, which does make it a very, very interesting race in Michigan, simply because you have a governor who is also term limited. I shouldn't say also, who is term limited. And so you have an open Democrat primary on both parties. Now, Michigan is definitely considered to be a purple state at the federal level. It has been a top battleground state since 2020. Obviously, Donald Trump won it in 2016 to much surprise. Donald Trump won the entire blue wall, the entire Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Maine's 2nd congressional district, Florida, Iowa. Donald Trump flipped a lot of places that they did not see coming, but especially in the blue wall, they did not see that coming. The Democrats did not see this coming, but it has been a battleground ever since then. The state backed Joe Biden by about 3 percentage points in 2020, and then backed Donald Trump by about 1.5 points in 2024. Now, both parties have seen a lot of success in Michigan. Democrats have seen it primarily in statewide races. Right now, Democrats control both Michigan's U.S. Senate seats, all statewide executive offices, and the state Senate. However, Republicans do control the Michigan House of Representatives and hold a majority in the U.S. House delegations. Now, Republicans have not won a Michigan Senate race since 1994 and have not won this seat since 1972. 1972 was the last time. That is just insane. Republicans have truly been locked out of power in the state. Last time a Republican won, wow. Spencer Abraham was the last Republican to win. And this seat, you have to go all the way back to 1972. Richard Nixon. When Richard Nixon was reelected in a huge landslide. You thought Reagan had a huge landslide. Look at this. Now, granted, Ronald Reagan did have a pretty big landslide as well. Don't get me wrong. But ultimately, talk about a landslide there. Talk about a landslide. But look at this. Definitely smaller margins in some of these states relative to where we saw Richard Nixon win by. Obviously, we know Watergate came next, and it was not great for them. Let's just put it there. Was not great. Now, this is the one of 2 Senate seats that states that voted for Donald Trump in 2024, but that have a Democrat running for re-election or a Democrat-held seat that's up for re-election in 2026. Now, on the Democrat side, we know that incumbent Senator Gary Peters announced that he was not running for re-election in the state. We have a number of different people. Haley Stevens, who I would say is probably seen as the favorite as of right now, who is a U.S. representative from Michigan's 11th congressional district. She worked in the Obama administration, came back and ran for this election in 2018 during Trump's first midterms, and has held it ever since then. Mallory McMerrill, who has been a state senator since 2018, and then the Wayne County Health Director, Abdul Al-Sayed, who was also a candidate for governor in 2018. As you can see, some big names that said they were not going to run here. Obviously, Gretchen Whitmer, she's term limited. We saw people like Pete Buttigieg. We really thought that, I thought that Buttigieg would jump in here, but ultimately he has his eyes set on 2028. Debbie Dingell. You saw Gary Peters. A lot of people not running. As of right now, really, Abdul Al-Sayed has the endorsements of Bernie Sanders and Ro Khan. So ultimately, a lot that we're going to see play out here. Right now in Poland, we saw that Gretchen Whitmer was leading the last time there was a poll taken, but she said she's not running in this race. Ultimately, it's because she has her eyes set on 2028. Like that simply is just it. She has her eyes set on 2028. In a senatorial run would really hold that up for 2028. Now, on the Republican side, Mike Rogers, obviously, who was the nominee for Senate in 2024, lost to Alyssa Slotkin by roughly about a 0.3 of a percentage point. 0.3 of a percentage point. Was a former Michigan congressional Republican for about a decade and a half, and seriously lost a very, very close race here. Now, we also have some other people in kind of the same thing, like we were talking about on the Democrat side. You have the same thing, an open primary on the Republican side for the governor's race. So you have a lot of names, people like John James said he's not running in this race. He is running for governor. Some big names. I expect Tudor Dixon will probably run for governor, I think. Obviously, we don't know. We really don't know what's going to happen. But I think as of right now, it's safe to say that Mike Rogers will be the nominee. He has the backing of the National Senatorial Republican Committee. Obviously, the chairman of that committee, Tim Scott, thrown his support behind him. Majority Leader John Thune has put his support behind him. And former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, really, through his support behind him. As of right now, it was a close race between Mike Rogers and Tudor Dixon, but Mike Rogers is the only one who is in this race as of right now. But an interesting poll you can see right here that in a hypothetical matchup, Rogers is beating out Haley Stevens. Now, granted, this was from 2 months ago, beating out Haley Stevens by roughly 6 percentage points. It's very, very interesting. So you can see that Mike Rogers probably is going to be the best candidate to run in this race from who we have right here. Obviously we don't want anything to do with Ronna McDaniel. No thanks. I am not the biggest fan of Ronna McDaniel. Let's just put it that way. Obviously, he still has about $500,000 cash on hand, and if he has the backing of the National Senatorial Republican Committee, he's going to get a lot of money poured into this race. Republicans see this as a major opportunity to cement support in the Senate going forward. As of right now, it's really considered a toss-up, except for race to the White House, which has it as a tilt seat as of right now. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. Ultimately, I think this is hard to say, but I think Haley Stevens will eventually become the nominee here, and then you're going to see Mike Rogers. We'll see what happens. Definitely a good race to keep your eye on. And then, of course, for the second, number 2 is the North Carolina Senate election. This is a very interesting one, where you are seeing incumbent 2-term Republican Senator Thom Tillis, who is running for re-election in 2026. He was initially elected back in 2014, beat out incumbent Senator Kay Hagan. Very, very close race. Like we said, 2014, great year for Republicans nationwide. We saw it all across the country. It was a really, really good year for Republicans. Fast forward to 2020, Thom Tillis, really surprisingly, won re-election by actually a 0.1 of a percentage point higher than he won in 2014. Thom Tillis, this is going to be a close election. As of right now, I have this as my one of 2 toss-up seats, which ultimately what we're going to see here is really a battle inside of the Republican Party. I think you could see a battle in the Republican Party. Now, North Carolina is typically, you would consider a swing state. It's a purpley red, it's more of a little slightly red seat, but definitely a purple-ish state that at the federal level has backed Donald Trump in the last 3 elections. It was the one swing state that voted for Donald Trump in the 2020 presidential election. Obviously a smaller margin, but it still backed Donald Trump nonetheless. Now, ultimately, both parties have seen some success in recent years. You look, at the same time, when Donald Trump won the state in 2024, you saw that Democrats won it by almost 15 points. Now, granted, there were some issues with Mark Robinson, a lot of issues. We don't need to go into it right now. If you follow politics, Danny DeGreen, if you've made it, let's see, we're 24 minutes into this right now. If you've made it this far, you probably know what happened in North Carolina. Josh Stein won, but this is really where it gets more interesting. Remember these numbers. Trump won North Carolina 3.7 in 2016, 1.3 in 2020. So remember that. 3.7 in 2016. And then fast forward, to 2020, and you see that they voted for Donald Trump by 1.3 percentage points. Look at the governor's side. At the same time when Donald Trump was elected in 2016, the state of North Carolina, voted for Donald Trump. At the same time, they elected Roy Cooper. Roy Cooper, a very popular, he was a 4-term attorney general. He was the first Democrat, first candidate to beat a sit-in governor in the state of North Carolina. A huge feat. Really, Roy Cooper ran ahead of Hillary Clinton in this race by, roughly 4 percentage points here. A huge feat. Fast forward to 2020, and he wins re-election by 4.5 points at the same time. At the same time, when Donald Trump won by 1.3 percentage points. So obviously, Roy Cooper has been in North Carolina politics for decades, for almost 4 decades. He is a force to be dealt with. He doesn't rely on Democrats to fundraise for him. He has built his own fundraising network. And that's what could make this this is why I have it as a toss-up race as of right now. Both parties have seen successes. There was a Supreme Court race from 2024 where the Democrats won by like 700 votes. At the same time, Trump won the state by, what did we say it was in 2024? 3.2 percentage points? Huge. So Republicans and Democrats have seen victories in this race. Now, on the Republican side, of course, Thom Tillis is running. And then Don Brown, who is a candidate for North Carolina's 8th Congressional District, is running. Ultimately, my thing is, if Laura Trump jumps in this race, I think you could see a battle, seriously a battle. Now, ultimately, most Republican senators have thrown their support behind Thom Tillis, and it really is no surprise. I'm not really surprised by it at all. And Thom Tillis has roughly $4 million cash on hand. But you can see right here, in a Victory Insights poll right after the 2024 election, Laura Trump was favored over Thom Tillis in North Carolina by almost 55 points. In a campaign viability research poll showed that someone else was leading Thom Tillis by 5 percentage points. Granted, I'm glad to see that Thom Tillis is beating out Mark Robinson, but that's also not something I would really be bragging about if I'm being 100% honest with you. So we'll see. If Laura Trump lives in Florida right now. She is from North Carolina, but she would have to move back to North Carolina. A lot that would have to happen. I think it's probably safe to say that Thom Tillis will be the nominee in 26. But there could be a fight. I would not be surprised if we saw a fight occur in this race. Now, on the Democrat side, this is what makes it a toss-up race. Right now, you have Wiley Nickel, who is the former representative, a 1-term representative from North Carolina's 13th Congressional District, who has declared. But that's not who scares us. It is Roy Cooper. Roy Cooper that is expected to jump in this race. He's very much expected to jump in this race. He was the former 2-term governor, a former 4-term attorney general. He also served in the state Senate for 10 years and was the Senate majority leader for a number of those years as well. Huge, very popular governor in this race. And you can see right here that in every single poll, Roy Cooper is beating Thom Tillis. Every single poll. Now, granted, is it close? And there is one thing I would like to point out. Go back to 2020. Remember, Cal Cunningham ran against Thom Tillis. Cunningham was seen as the favorite. Look at this right here. Let's see. Five of the 9 prediction services thought that this was a Democrat flip. They really did. They thought this was a Democrat flip. The margin in 270 to win was Cunningham was going to win by about 2.8 and Real Clear-headed by 2.6. I bet you can count on 1, maybe 2 hands how many times Thom Tillis was leading in a poll. Look at how many polls. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 polls in total that he was leading by. 8 polls. Ultimately, Thom Tillis ended up squeaking by. He squeaked by roughly 100,000 votes when basically everyone thought that the Democrats were going to win. They either thought that the poll said that they were going to win, or that simply it was a toss-up. So, Thom Tillis is no stranger, definitely no stranger to tight elections, but something that could hurt him. He has been censured twice by the North Carolina Republican Party, which means logistically there's nothing really they can do. But simply the fact that there is a large faction of the Republican Party who is frustrated with him, that could be an issue. If he cannot convince those Republicans to turn out, there could be some major issues there if he does not get the support that he needs from the Republican base. He would have to appeal more to moderates, more to independents, more to disenfranchised Democrats. That's what he would have to do. Now, before we move on, and I didn't even think about doing this until now, before we move on to the number one seat to watch, I just want to throw out there kind of, I don't know what they call that, but it's kind of, this is something that would have made the list. You were real close. It was a runner-up. And that is going to be the Texas Senate race in 2026. I think this could be a very, very interesting race in 2026. This is where you have incumbent Senator John Cornyn, who is being challenged by current Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. It could be a big battle. Now, of course, Ted Cruz declined to endorse. John Cornyn's got $5.5 million cash on hand. He has performed pretty well, but look at this. In every poll taken, Ken Paxton is leading John Cornyn. Leads him by 21 points. Now, this was a couple years ago. Let's look at, May. Look at this. 13 percentage points, 16 points, 17 points. Wow. This could be some trouble for the Republicans. Ultimately, Colin Allred has already jumped in this race. It says publicly expressed, but Wikipedia, obviously the Wikipedia editors have not been keeping up on this. But Beto O'Rourke, I think, remember this close election back in 2018? Ted Cruz only won by 2.6 percentage points here against Beto O'Rourke in a midterms for the Republicans, when Republicans lost the House of Representatives. Do not mess around with this. Now, granted, this is a seat that voted for Trump by a big margin, but look, in close races, you can see it can get down to single digits, and not just big single digits. We're talking 2 percentage points. So this is definitely an election, I think the primary, specifically the Republican primary, that we should keep an eye on. But now fast forward to number one, the top Senate race I believe you should watch out for in 2026, and that is the Georgia Senate race in 2026, where you have incumbent Senator Jon Ossoff, who is running for his first re-election. He was initially elected back in 2021 in a runoff and is running for a second term in office. And they had some huge news recently when former popular Governor Brian Kemp announced that he would not run for re-election, or he would not run for this election. He's term limited as the governor. He said he is not going to run for the Senate, which is really a huge disappointment, because you had many people who were really courting Brian Kemp to run in this race. Jon Ossoff is seen as the most vulnerable Democrat he's probably the most vulnerable senator, period, up for re-election in 2026. Now, this is a very interesting state. This is a state that was once a Republican stronghold. Look at this. Bush won it by almost 17 points. Fast forward to 2016, Trump carries it by 5. Joe Biden, barely by 1/4 of a percentage point, wins it in 2020. Trump wins it back by about 2 points in 2024. And you ask why? How is this turn from a Republican stronghold, a truly Republican stronghold, to a toss-up seat? Look at the surrounding areas outside of Atlanta. 2 decades ago, Democrats were winning Clayton County, DeKalb County, and Fulton County. Everything else was a Republican stronghold. It was a solid red. Republicans are winning by double digits at a minimum. Look at this. Fayette, George Bush wins by 42 points. Henry, 33 points. Fast forward to 2024. Look at this. Fayette County, Trump barely wins it by 3 points. Douglas County flips to Harris, 31 points. Cobb County, 14 points. Gwinnett County, 16 points. Newton County, 15. Rockdale, almost 50 percentage points. You are seeing the ever-expanding population in the metro area around Atlanta, and it is extremely liberal. Extremely liberal. This is how, just like most states, liberals know how to run the vote up in the big cities, and they basically just need to outrun all of the other small counties they're going to vote red. Because you can see here, Trump wins 132 of these counties. But when some of these counties have, in total, 4,000 people in it, it's kind of different than here where you have close to 350,000 people in it. It's a completely different state. But also, I know we said we have some bad news for the Republicans that Brian Kemp is not running, but we also had some pretty big news too. Some pretty big news that Marjorie Taylor Greene was not going to run for re-election, or was not going to run here. We know, we've talked about this many times. You can go check out the videos on my channel about how Marjorie Taylor Greene would have been a terrible candidate. In the 14th Congressional District, she ran behind Trump in one of the most pro-Trump counties in America. She ran up to 5, 6, 7, up to like 12 points behind Trump in certain counties in her district. But she announced, which it sounds like Donald Trump really tried to push her to not run for this race here. We are now seeing that really we have John King, Buddy Carter, who have already jumped in this race right now. Donald Trump, it sounds like Brian Jack is his pick. Brian Jack worked on the Trump campaign. He worked in the Trump White House. He was the White House Director of Political Affairs. And he worked on the Trump 2024 campaign and then has now represented Georgia's 3rd Congressional District since 2025. That seems, this is a very vulnerable seat. You cannot play around with fire. This needs to be a solid candidate that has broad appeal. He needs to appeal to independents. They need to be able to appeal to disenfranchised Democrats. They need to solidify support in the Republican Party. But also, like many of these other races, you have an open governor's race. So the AG right now of the state of Georgia is probably seen as the best candidate to win statewide. But ultimately, he's running for governor. He doesn't want to run for the Senate. He doesn't. So ultimately, on the Democrat side, though, of course, you have Jon Ossoff, has the endorsement of Raphael Warnock, the other senator. If you want to see what happens when Republicans mess around with candidate quality, look at what happened in Georgia in 2022. Warnock wins re-election by 3 points at the same time when very popular Governor Brian Kemp wins re-election by 7 points. Kind of a joke. The AG also won re-election. The Secretary of State won re-election. A lot of statewide races went to the Republicans, except the Senate side when we decided that we were going to nominate Herschel Walker, and Raphael Warnock won this election. And Republicans and Democrats said, this is the creme de la creme here. This is where they are going to pour money into the race. This is Jon Ossoff, $11 million cash on hand. $11 million. But look at this. This is why they wanted Brian Kemp. Look at this. He's the only candidate who leads Jon Ossoff in a head-to-head match in any polls that have been conducted. It's kind of embarrassing. We're going to see what happens, though. But ultimately, that's why, and of course, this is another seat that was won by Trump. The state was won by Trump in 2024, and now has a Democrat senator up for re-election. Ultimately, if I had to say which way I think this is going to go without all the details, I think I would say it's a tilt in a tilt. This is kind of my final. If you had to put a gun to my head right now, I shouldn't have said that. YouTube, please don't demonetize me for saying that. But if you had to, if someone was forcing me to make a choice here, this is probably what I would say it would look like. But ultimately, still, it's going to be a good night for Republicans. Because I have Democrats, even if Democrats hold Georgia, pick up North Carolina, hold Michigan, and pick up Maine, their ceiling's still at 49 seats. Where are you going? Are you going to Ohio? John Husted in Ohio, who are you going to run? Sherrod Brown? Maybe Tim Ryan? Who are you going to run? I think Sherrod Brown seems most likely for a Democrat to win. But remember, Sherrod Brown lost to, not J.D. Vance, what's his name? Bernie Moreno by roughly 3 percentage points. But still, Moreno ran behind Donald Trump by like 8 percentage points. So, like, where are the Democrats going to go if they think they're to even get to a, and this isn't even a majority here. They get to 50-50, J.D. Vance is the tie-breaking vote. So I just don't see where are they going to go on the offensive? You're going to go to Alaska? You're going to go to Ohio? So I just don't see it happening. But ultimately, yeah, if you had to make me choose today, this is where I would probably put the race as of right now. Maybe some of these could be closer than others, but ultimately races that we absolutely should keep in mind. So I appreciate everyone sticking around. We're 40 minutes into this video, so thank you so much for sticking around. As always, drop down below, hit that subscribe button, and make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future. And folks, we will catch you next time.